After your tree has been put onto your painted background paper with pencil, we're going to fill in the tree with metallic color. There is a set of metallics that will be at your table, at different kinds of golds, bronzes, coppers, green gold, silver. The only one that I don't have a refill for is this light gold. We don't have any more of this color. So if you see that there's not a lot of paint in here, you may want to choose a different color. This one also is very see-through. It's very translucent. So if you have dark colors like this, don't choose a lighter color of metallic, or you're going to have to make more than one layer of paint. So because I'm using very dark colors, I'm going to choose this really dark copper color, because I won't have to add as many layers to it. Please don't open all of the paint colors. If you're not using one, leave it closed. And because we're just using one for our color tree, don't need water today. I'm dipping my brush in, but I don't have to dip it all the way to the bottom. This is very thick paint. It's not exactly like watercolor, it's more like acrylic. So it's not going to drip on you. When I'm painting, I'm using my brush gently, and I'm wiping it in long strokes, going in the same direction. Whenever I start to run out of paint, like that, I don't push harder with my brush. I can flip my brush over if you're using a flat brush. But when it runs out, I just need to go back for more paint. Don't paint with a dry brush. Don't scrub your brush, or you're not going to get a clean line like this. So even though this paint is still pretty dark and thick, you can see the color difference on our tree. So even if you use a darker color, you may have to use more than one layer of paint, meaning that once the paint starts to dry, you just paint over it again with your brush. So I will paint my tree, and then I'll probably go back over it a little bit too, so it stands out. Now, if you're using a flat brush like I am, I'm using the side right now so I can get a thinner line. If I want a thicker line, I would use the whole broad part. I'm turning my brush as I go too. If it's easier to turn your paper, turn your paper. If you need a smaller brush because your spirals get very, very thin, I will have some by the sink or up front. But don't use that brush for your whole tree. Try not to use it if you can help it. Your spirals shouldn't get too thin because it gets too hard to keep track of. Alright, so I've done one layer on my tree. I can see where some of the paint is thicker than others, so I'm going to go back to where I started, where the paint is going to be a little drier, and add a second layer. This will not work if you try and paint on top of paint that's still very wet. It'll just rub together. If you want to get a thicker layer, you have to wait for the paint to dry a little bit. If you make a brush stroke you didn't mean to, or you go outside the lines, that's okay. Remember what I told you about those pencil drawings. It's just a guideline, so it's easier to paint your tree. It would be great if you could hide a lot of those pencil lines. Make your brush strokes a little thicker so it covers the pencil. One less thing that you have to worry about later. When your tree is finished and you've done a second layer, you can put it on the drying rack, put your brush in the red bucket in the sink, and make sure to close the caps up on the paint.